you have to allow me to share.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. You are allowed.
Well, I don't think I don't know that is that showing? I don't know.
Not yet.
No, because I did. There's something that I'm supposed to press in order to be able to show
Mm.
this.
Okay, though I have shared
I have. Let me see.
on the bottom of my screen in the center.
Okay, so let me. Okay, good. Share. All right, good. Let me see. This should do it then.
And Ken, also, if you would like to display a slide that could be helpful for you and your business, and of course,
Okay.
Joseph.
Okay, good. Now, so this should do it then. This should do it.
Okay.
Voila. Okay.
All right, PhilipBerry, how much time should we expect with this?
Well, I know that everybody has schedules. I mean, I'm going to share what I can within 20 minutes, and then we can have some discussion. I think that's beyond that.
Yeah.
Um, I think what we really need to do is to get into some of the concepts behind it. So let me see what I can do with that, and I've outlined the slides so that way it's able to give us what we want. And what I really like about this is that, Ed, from the standpoint of this concept, which is a really wonderful concept for us to talk about, uh, what we need to be concerned about is the strategies and actions and initiatives that help to bridge the gap. It's interesting because as who was it Ken or who Joseph who was talking about the bridge?
Yeah, Joseph.
Yeah, yeah. So this analogy is going to carry us through because what I'm going to talk about is bridging the gap. Yeah, and how do we bridge the whole issue of vision and execution? And I like to look at it not from the standpoint of just levels. It's not just from the standpoint of the top levels in the organization to middle management. It has to do with wherever the vision is coming from in the organization down to those who have to execute. And these actions of vision are, if they are not executed, and if people don't buy into it, and if they don't get a hold of it, then it's not going to take place. And so that's why what we have to look at is how vision is translated into actions that will occur within the organization. That's what we're talking about here. So usually the board sets the direction, but the decisions really can be very far away from that, from what the intention is regarding the strategy. And so tipping point leadership is the concept that I'm going to go into, and I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of not philosophically, because I think we can stay easily on the philosophy, but I want to go directly into very specific, four very specific actions or systems that will directly address the disconnects. And and I think there's another voice in there somewhere.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Joanne's.
Okay. But so what we're talking about is how can we identify those four organizational hurdles that block action? It has to do with cognitive, resource, motivational, and political. And so when leaders understand this, then it moves them from a point of a strategy or vision into execution and reality. And so we start with these four questions. I mean, I love the fact what I'm trying to do here is to keep it out of the Ethernet and make this very simple. From the standpoint of cognitive, do people understand why we must change? That's not, I mean, it seems like a very simple type of concept, but the why uh, yeah, is something that a number of strategists talk about that we really don't always have that very clear in the organization. And then, two, when people think about the why, do we have resources that are really aligned to those priorities? And then the third point has to do with, do we have the right people motivated to lead this particular change? And then political has to do with how are we looking at issues of resistance and the politics, which again has to do with how resources are set up and deals with having the right people in place. I mean, all of these are important points that will motivate us to have the right people involved as a linking pin to translate the vision into actions that people can execute because they're very clear on it. Let me go into these four in a very specific manner. And what we're looking at from the standpoint, first of all, of the boardroom, is that the moves that I've talked about in terms of these hurdles, think of the hurdles as a race that you're running. And so you can't go to from one, you have to go from one hurdle to the next, and you can't move forward unless you have addressed some of the first pieces. And so it has to do with an awareness first, really creating the need or genuine awareness in the organization that people need to change throughout the organization. And that means that's from the salesperson, that's from the person who was on the shop store, that's the person who was in the warehouse. It's interesting because all of these individuals have to buy in to the fact that there's change, because if they buy into it, then they're going to be aligned with the organization to make it happen. And then they are going to understand what we need to do and how we need to concentrate resources so that way they are really hitting on the strategic priorities. And that's extremely important. And then the motivation, what we see are policies that are in place, but many times people aren't directed with the policies. The policies get in the way. Management behavior gets in the way. The actions that are executed on a day-to-day basis get in the way. And and they can neutralize. And so people really have to be motivated so that way they can act and deal with resistance. So let's talk first about the cognitive hurdle. Why must we change it? The first thing is looking at what we call the status quo trap. Many people really just want to, because they don't see the need for change, they just want to keep doing what they're doing. There's comfort in that. There's complacency in that, that is bred because individuals are very familiar and comfortable with what they're doing. And so, what we need to do is to help people move from a point of, well, okay, I can agree, but do I really believe? And so moving people from agreement and principle to genuine belief is something that is required for change to occur. And it's not just intellectual, it's emotional, so that people can really, within the aspect of their DNA, they can see how they can move forward. And then what we need to do from a cognitive standpoint is surface some of the competitive threats and look at new opportunities that are vivid and undeniable. And then let's make this reality tangible. Put managers face to face with operational problems that they have so that the urgency of change becomes impossible to dismiss. And this is something that is important from the standpoint of AI. AI helps us to get the type of data that exists so that way we can understand exactly what's going on, and we have that data and the facts that can move us forward, not emotional. It's not something where people are driven by the mythology of what's going on in the organization or in the marketplace regarding products that exist, but AI could help us to bring forth the factual understanding that helps to build the cognition so that way we understand why we have to change. And then, and what I'm going to put the four pieces in front of us and then let's talk about it. And then we get into a point, if you get past that hurdle, then we can really begin to focus on, well, what really matters? And that's the default trap. Organizations default to asking, usually they say, well, I don't have enough money to do this. I need more time. Um, but what we want to do is really ask, what are the ways that we can reallocate, not inflate resources, but blue ocean thinking has individuals looking at the resources that we have and saying, how can we redirect those rather than just requesting more money that we may not need or that's not going to go into the right place. And this is a question that needs to be really thought about in every level of the organization. Re-looking at the budget decisions, re-looking at how individuals are allocating their time across the organization, reallocating the people so that way they can do some different things. And this is how something like AI can really help us so that way we can figure out how can we reallocate resources in a way that is going to be smarter, more effective, and more efficient. And therefore come to a conclusion saying, let's concentrate on impact. So that way, when we look at how we are going to execute, we can move the resources to high impact initiatives and create the momentum that really helps to build organizational confidence. And if we can get to that point, after we have gotten past the hurdle of cognition problems, then we can also say, well, how do we energize key people in the organization? Because we know that vision really needs to have action. And it's only going to be an action when people can understand that. A vision without action is like a pipe dream. Actions without a vision is like a nightmare. That's a Japanese theory that I have learned recently. And so, how can we begin to get that in place so that vision and action are positioned in the appropriate manner to motivate us? And only when managers and teams are motivated to act can we have the strategy that we need so that the strategy is not just a document. How many of us are involved in organizational plans where we come up with very good documents, but we want to make sure that it's energy that is positioned in the right place. And then what we want to do is to find the kingpins, the people who can influence the organization and create the momentum that is needed from one point to another. It's really, you really can see that the right people at the right place can tip the entire system. And so it has to do with identifying key players, individuals who are our stars in the subsidiaries everywhere around the world, who are close to the marketplace, who are close to the customer, who are close to understanding how the competition is performing and what they're doing. Those are what we call the kingpins. And so being able to identify those people energizes the key people that we need in order to make change occur. It has to do with those kingpins or probably people who have been asking for these type of changes for a long period of time, but nobody is listening to them. Their word doesn't get all the way up to the top of the organization. That's how we are able to bridge the gap that exists in organizations because the people, we're not listening. We don't have good communication that is in place. And communication has to stem from not just from the top to the bottom, but it has to do, that's, matter of fact, that's what people usually think about. They say, well, we need to move this organization forward. We need to tell them more. We need to make sure they understand. Well, but then if we get the cognition in place with understanding and we know where the resources are, then we can motivate people so that way we have people listening on all sides, all across the organization. And that enables us from the standpoint of step three of the motivational hurdle is looking at how we can celebrate visible wins in the organization and really get the commitment in place that helps us to accelerate adoption. And that's when we get stories. How many times are we in organizations where stories and mythology about what's going on is guiding the decisions and it is guiding the way people are perceiving how good are we as an organization? What do we need to do differently? Well, what we can do is to begin to generate some early success stories that are powerful motivators for everybody to making sure that everybody is on the same team. And so if we get to that hurdle, then the next is navigating the resistance that always will come in organizations, identifying, engaging, and neutralizing opposition. Identifying the coalitions that we need to have in place and resisting and neutralizing the resistance that comes from those who are not supporting, being able to re-engage with individuals so that way we can anticipate how we can get the powerful stakeholders in place across the organizations who will activate the processes right in the beginning and carry them through. And then identifying the change agents that can help us to create the insights and the winners and look at how we can move the organization forward in that manner. So these are the type of things that we talk about when we're talking about tipping point leadership of that framework. And having that framework in place, it's a very tactical and a very strategic and operationally action-oriented process that can help us to remove the gaps that exist. So those are the pieces that I wanted to contribute in terms of this. And if we look at the bridge, how can we bridge the gap? We can start right away by diagnosing each of those particular hurdles in the organization and then applying the right type of strategies in each of those areas that help us to be more diagnostic and strategic and operationally effective in moving the vision to execution. It's not going to happen until we look at it from those particular standpoints. And a number of the things that I talk about in my work, has to do with making sure that individuals are in place where they can identify the skills, the values, and the competencies that are important for them to navigate through those hurdles. That's the work. So I look at what can I do? That's what I can do to help in organizations to identify the skills that help us to build better cognition, to appreciate how resources need to be allocated appropriately and strategically, to look at how we can provide motivational actions, and also so that we can deal appropriately with the politics in the organization. So
Excellent. Thank
from
you.
here, maybe we can talk, but I just want to put this up and then
Yeah.
talk about it from this standpoint.
Oh, fabulous. This will be a resource going forward for years. So everybody, Philip told me the other day that his book is being translated into multiple languages. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, one of the things that I'm doing in order to be more global is my own particular strategy has been, first of all, it was to write something that people can see. Yeah. And then also is to have something that people can hear. And so that has to do with where I'm looking at a book that would be a verbal book
Yeah.
soon. And then also I have another strategy in place in terms of sight. And that I will talk about a little later on in the year, where people can see, it's all right for people to see the words, hear the words. Now maybe they can see it in action. That's another thing I'm working on. But I have already begun the process of translating the book into Spanish and into French. That's in place. And then I'm also looking at it in Arabic, in Cantonese, and in German. And those are forthcoming soon, before the
Yeah.
year is my particular goal.
So that's really excellent. I want to go to Joseph. Joseph, uh, the brilliance of that show that we did a few months ago on the Golden Bridge, and you explained to me if I get it wrong, please correct me, was that the whole concept is in difficult negotiations, and we could see what's going on in the world right now, uh, and looking and then establishing somehow off ramps rather than confrontation. Joseph McGuire.
Yeah, the concept of the Golden Bridge comes originally from The Art of War by the Chinese general Sun Tzu.
So, yeah.
The basic idea is that if there is conflict, always create a golden bridge on which your enemy can retreat. Now, obviously, in the workplace, we hope we're not dealing with enemies, but we can be, as Philip said, we can be dealing with opposition, and that opposition may be in our own team as well. So, what, how do we create, what is the opposition? What does it mean? What are the politics involved again? Following on from what Philip was saying, and how do we negotiate with that so that we are all very much on the same page? And certainly, from my own experience, um, one of the deficits that comes up quite frequently is the clarity of communication or the lack of clarity of communication from the top down. Like there's what the board agrees and what the board defines, but then there's what actually happens as communication moves down through the layers. And there's often a lack of training in terms of the leadership, their ability to train what leadership actually means. And then again, there's often a training deficit as we move down through the layers. So it becomes effectively a form of Chinese whispers, that the message becomes distorted as it goes down. And then we have at least some degree of chaos. So there's a whole series of steps in building the bridge or in implementing the bridge or where to place the bridge as we work through any given organization. I think it would be the same for each of us that we're likely to be called in when there's a problem rather than when everything is moving swimmingly. So we're more inclined to recognize what the problems are, where they lie, and then look at providing solutions. And the idea of the bridge is a central theme for whatever the solution may be.
Dr. KenLloyd.
This is a wonderful framework that Philip has presented today for approaching and implementing change in an organization. I mean, there's so many positive aspects to it. One of many that jumped out at me was your use of the term kingpins. And going back, we looked at them at these kingpins as these are the natural leaders in the organization. And when we're trying to implement change, it's very helpful to have them on board because they can help, if you will, sell it to the rest of the team. Gee, if Ed thinks this is a good idea, I know Ed, I trust him, I'll listen to him. So we want to make sure if Ed is one of those kingpins or leaders, we do have him on board. Yeah. And it's interesting, even in the world of marketing, they use the term marketing innovators. These are sort of the first people that will buy the product and they then help to sell it to the others. So we as marketers aren't really directly selling to everybody. We're selling to these innovators, to these kingpins, who then help sell our products to the others. And it's the same kind of thing in an organization to make sure, and as Joseph really emphasizes in his work, understanding our employees as individuals and knowing which ones are in fact the natural leaders, the kingpins, and really to be sure we're communicating effectively with them when we're talking about and implementing change. And not just communicating one way with them about the changes, making that a true two-way communication process as well.
So Joseph, what do you think of the connection here with what I started out saying about creating global business C-suite forum, temporary name for sure, but sort of trying to get the branding correct, strategic branding. Once again, I got to read this, the Golden Bridge concept to better understand the connection, the bridge between boardroom, C-suite executive visions for the organizations, but then get it executed. And so it's the middle management. So in between, there's all this trust issue stuff and feedback, feed forward, constant talent development, and showing appreciation of the talent. What Ron Cooper and I discussed fabulously and very impromptu about 10 days ago was the idea of don't fear Gen Z, understand what Gen Z needs, because the customers, not just the employees, are going to be Gen Z, and Gen Z understands AI. And me, a boomer, we don't get it, but we're learning. And so now how do you bridge that gap, bring that into the organization? And by the way, if you can do that, then you can sell to others out there who are customers in Gen Z, utilizing AI and then rewarding that junior talent right now with money and prestige and congratulations, just like you were saying, Joseph, to
Yeah.
elevate the whole thing. Joseph?
Well, to follow on directly from what Ken was saying there are the conversations that happen on screen like this, but there are a lot of really significant conversations that have to happen off screen. And again,
Yeah.
it comes back to who are the kingpins for the strategy, for the vision. And can you identify them? If you can't identify them, who can help you identify them? And then who can make those introductions so that you're having those conversations, your planning, your preparation, your strategy are all done before any public discussion.
That's right.
And then you plan how to bring it out into the public and
Right.
who are the key people you want to reach in that arena as well.
So just as an aside, in the last, I don't know, since April or May, I've made a concerted effort to learn from, in this case, Gemini. Um, and and it's a Google thing, and everything is recorded. So Gemini. So I asked Gemini about how do I take what I have been producing on Global TV Talk Show across the past year and more recently to go forward into a new world, embracing the multi-generations, blah, blah, blah. And so Gemini asked me questions about what do I want to achieve, which is my talent market. And so I send back, well, this, and then they say, then here's what you need to do. And they're the ones who said, you already have a good relationship with JosephMcGuire and that Golden Bridge. You already have PhilipBerry and his years of experience of international talent movement and development to benefit the organization, regardless of who, where, and when and what. And Ken's understanding of communicating with the talent. So I'm really honored and happy to have you guys here today. I wish Ron could have been here too, because he has a unique perspective. Now, going forward, I want to do a series of these kinds of talks involving others uh, from around the world. I'm developing an old relationship, redeveloping, rebranding, if you will, Philip. And an old customer, not old, but a good guy, Thomas Efkerman. He's from Germany in Frankfurt, and he's a senior within KPMG. And he and I have been dialed. Now, years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I was producing live meetings in Germany, Frankfurt, Berlin, Cologne area. And KPMG was always involved. And at that time, Thomas was in some high-tech company in a leadership role, and then switched over to KPMG. And so on his own, Thomas gave a speech to his group, KPMG Germany, about the relationship that he and I had years ago in producing live meetings. And he's considering redeveloping that with me for me to come over but in the meantime, do some online stuff. Fascinating stuff. It's like bringing something that was really good uh, a long time ago and bringing it into today. And and then what are the obstacles? Exactly what Philip was just talking about. So I wanted to share that with you.
You know,
And yes, go ahead.
no, I didn't want to cut you off. I mean, Ed, I've known you for over 20 years of my life.
Yeah, we met in 1999 in Paris.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And one of the things that Global HR News has always done very well is bringing together different people in organizations who are applying their craft, and then they're sharing their information and expertise with each other, including the development of the comradeship that comes from that association. That I mean, that's to me still a winning formula. When when you have um, organizations, in fact, people in different organizations, some of those organizations are, even compete with each other. However, within the context of the forum, you have found a very good way for people to share their information and share expertise. And so when Joseph talks about the bridges, I mean, I really, that really resonated with me. And
Right.
when Ken
Thank,
talks about the communication that has to take place, I mean, those are evergreen concepts that if we could have those in place in a number of other forums that where people are supposed to be coming together. I mean, I'm just thinking about the power of the thought, how it can magnify itself so that people can grow from it. I mean, so I would just say I would underscore the information that you're getting, from your outside Gemini experts to say that, like, it's almost like I like the Wizard of Oz, where they said, "Well, Dorothy, you've always had the power." You know, I mean, you have it. You don't have to go keep looking for it. You have the power. So I would say that just keep, and I know that I personally have, I mean, I will say over those years how I have personally grown from my association with you and the people that you bring together in this type of forum because there's a value system. See, the values that you have in place are those of sharing and learning. Yeah, and just hearing some of the retort to the piece that I did and getting the feedback from Joseph and from Ken on their thoughts, and I just picked up some nice nuggets from that. I mean, that whole Golden Bridge thing, I have to go back and I think it's probably, and I didn't see I know that there's a video that you have from that, but I didn't get to review that. So, or maybe it's in one of the papers that you have. I need to take a look at that.
I'll send that show to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ken, yesterday on the show with Ron Cooper, you showed a slide. Um, uh, I cannot bring it up with ease. If you want to use it, that's fine. If you just want to talk about some of those key items, because I think it's very relevant. Again, communicating with 4 or 5 generations of talent, and that's a minefield of problems.
It was just a slide dealing with kind of the newest ways to provide employees with feedback, and as Ed mentioned earlier, feed forward, and helping them to learn, grow, develop, move their careers to a direction which they would like to go. I really like what Philip is saying here because it provides a mindset in terms of how to approach change. CRM and P. We're talking about those factors, and they're not customer relationship management, but really cognition and resources and motivation, and moving in that direction. When I think of Joseph's presentation, we talked about bridges. I can still picture, it was your slide that had the bridge with the hands on it, was it not, Joseph?
Yeah.
And how do you forget that image in terms of building and maintaining bridges with people? So if we can give people, if you will, mnemonics and images to remember as they're approaching the conflicts and conditions and changes in the world of work, it's very helpful strategy. And that visual of the bridge, as well as, Philip, the framework that you just presented, are great tools. Within that context, Ed is kind of mentioning kind of the key points that I had talked about in today's new appraisals. I'll gladly quickly show the slide following the same angst that Philip expressed in making sure it comes up properly. But let me take a look here. Hold on. Where are you? Oh, we can use this one. That should be fine. We'll find out. Yeah, this is, we'll kind of move this a bit. This is just for appraisals today very quickly, and it ties right in, frankly, with the concepts that Philip and Joseph have mentioned. One, getting rid of this once a year feedback. We're going to have our performance appraisals are coming up in a month. You better get ready. And I'm currently reading articles where business leaders are saying, don't be nice, don't be kind in these reviews. Sit down and give them the facts and spell it. What kind of archaic talk is that? As opposed to what's called continuous feedback, meeting regularly, either once a week or once every other week, with individual employees, with each member of your team, to talk about how things are going, how's goal attainment, what's going well, where do you need some help, some support, some guidance, some resources, how can we work together to help you get where you want to go? So it's not just feedback, it's feed forward, which is really related to providing the tools and strategies and steps to help people improve their performance and help them get where they want to go. And as we've already talked about, it's not one-way communication. Just as in introducing change, it's not one way unless you want a guarantee of resistance, as opposed to bona fide two-way communication where we're really listening, and in the appraisal session, it counts as well. And we're talking about developing the employees for managers to see themselves as coaches. So I'm not just an assessor, I'm not a disciplinarian, and I'm not just, quote, a resource manager, but I'm working with people, I'm coaching, guiding, helping them develop. And frankly, I'm learning from them. And that's a very important factor as well. I don't know it all, and I don't want to know it all. I want to continue learning, because once you hit the point where you think you know it all, you've stopped learning, and that's the end of the game. So we need to be in that learning mode as well as coaching mode throughout. Career development, employees, we know that, certainly with Gen Z, but millennials as well, that they're interested in feedback, guidance, and support that will get them to their career goals. So tying that in that communication and feedback process helps. Varied sources, that's really talking about 360-degree feedback, so that if we are sitting with our employees and providing them with help and guidance and support, it's not just what we've observed. Here's some data from your coworkers, from other departments where you work, from vendors if you deal with them, from customers. And again, it's not in the sense of any kind of punishment or discipline, but these are tools. This is to help in the feed forward and development process. Common mistakes, this kind of approach prevents a lot of them. The delay between feedback and performance. If we want people to really learn and grow, giving them feedback months after whatever behavior occurred, positive or negative, is useless and typically resented and not a lot of fun to provide as well. And focusing on personality versus performance, being general instead of specific, all those mistakes are easily avoided by getting away from this once a year thing. And finally, following up and working with employees to jointly establish goals, development goals, performance goals, and building from there. And ideally, this helps set the kind of culture in which the framework that Philip and Joseph have mentioned applies perfectly. If we have the exact frameworks that they've discussed, And then we're doing once a year appraisals. We're setting the ground for failure, as opposed to, as part of the cultures that they're talking about, having this kind of respect, trust, and two-way communication. So I said I would be quick, and that is quick.
Thank you
That's
very
really
much.
the
We
framework. I
have
do want to
about,
say, well,
well,
just
one
one
second,
point
time
for
check.
Joseph.
We have around 12 minutes if you want to end on the half hour, or we can go longer if you want. Philip,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, I just want to I want to give just some insight on what Ken, like when I first started, I've been in business and working in organizations for a long period of time. I've been conducted a lot of management courses. Well, if those courses that people get when they're in the organization had all of the features that Ken just identified, had that in the beginning, they would be excellent managers. I mean, you've just put the key. It's almost like baking a cake, and then you miss out some of the key ingredients, which Ken has identified in terms of feedback and feed forward and continuous improvement. And so we've learned about that later on down the line. Most of the time, people were just saying, "Well, let's just make sure we give people a quarterly review. Tell them what they did well, but then tell them what they did wrong." It was more, we didn't attach the values to it, which is what Ken is talking about. I mean, that's immense from the standpoint. Every leadership and development course needs to have all of those features, all of those pieces that are in the equation. Not having it misses on a lot in terms of developing managers who are able to bridge the gap. When we talk about bridging the gap, we need individuals to have those in their skill set. They need to be rebranded. And people work their brand based on just a few of those features, but they can rebrand themselves by, like with the whole thing of branding. I've come to the conclusion that whatever you're doing over a lifetime, every 10 years, you need to rebrand yourself. And so those type of things that are in there that Ken just reported are definitely a part of the rebranding feature for every person who calls themselves a leader in an organization.
Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. I always learn so much from listening to Ken and Philip. And it's always such a privilege to be here. There's so many different pieces to pick up on there, but the one that particularly jumped out at me was the term two-way communication and that idea that notion that you can't be nice to people.
Mm.
It's such a fallacy. If we're talking about communication by definition to be effective has to be two-way anyway. But if we're talking about one-way communication, it's didactic, it's directive, it's often confrontational, it's certainly disrespectful in many cases. So we're creating opposition, which clearly is not the objective. And it does remind me of a conversation I had some time ago with a friend of mine who's a former US Army interrogator. And he talked about the fact, we see in the movies where interrogation is about throwing people up against the wall and threatening them and all of that. And he said that doesn't work. Real interrogation is about establishing rapport. And if we want to be effective or we want leaders to be effective, they have to be able to establish rapport. And we can be nice, we can be kind, we can be respectful, and get the message across and get things done very, very effectively. But it requires us to take our ego out of it, to demonstrate that we can be respectful, but to bring real clarity to the table in terms of how and what we communicate.
Excellent. I just made a headline in my notes here about establishing rapport. What should we do from here, Ken?
Well, if I could just one small piece on what Joseph said, which an insight also. Like I think about one of the key things when you talk about developing a rapport with a person, that is something, especially when you talk about all of the different generations, Gen X and Y, whatever. We need people in an organization who can show that they care about the person that they've employed, and developing a rapport with them. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not giving them very straightforward information. You are giving them, you're being straight with them, but they understand because of your rapport, you also are communicating that you care about their development. You care about the contributions that they're making and that they can make, you know, giving maybe a few tweaks in their skills and their behavior. You want more from them. I mean, that's what Joseph is talking about.
And it's all simply good business sense as well.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right. Oh, that's great. Now this is good. I think that continuing at some of these discussions and bringing forth a topic where we can approach it like from different vantage points. Each of us have a specific lens that we're looking at all of this stuff from. I mean, I would value being able to continue those type of dialogues because I can learn from that. I
Once a month,
sure.
maybe some others in between too. Yeah, I tried to get some ladies to join us, but uh, not
Well, you just
working.
have to keep working on
Yeah, right. I got to be more creative,
it.
more creative. Um, if you have an occasion to talk with our new friend Jana in Rio, that would be an interesting voice. Andrea in Bucharest, I think would
Oh
also
yeah, I mean,
be
what I've
good.
heard from them, I don't know, but yeah, it's wonderful. I
Yeah,
mean, when I've
okay.
heard them speak and what they contribute is great. So,
Yeah, and there's a lady in just up the road here in Irvine, uh, who's I don't know if she's president or executive director of some think tank in Irvine, high level, very high level. And she's expressed an interest to join, but it hasn't materialized yet. I'll keep working on it.
no,
Thank
definitely.
you.
No, I think it's good. Yeah, you have to go back to your charm school.
Uh,
And-
I should show up in person at some meetings.
yeah, exactly. Hey,
The
Bring
idea of
flowers.
driving on the freeways
flowers.
is
Whenever you last given flowers.
the flowers. Oh, you don't bring me flowers anymore. That's the
Exactly
song.
right.
I don't need flowers.
I need flowers. I love flowers. I mean, I need flowers. Matter of fact, you do
Funny.
give me flowers every once in a while. It's not, the actual petals and stuff, but I get flowers from you, so
That's funny. Well, thank you guys. This has been great. I'll
well,
work
thank you.
on the show. We're going to pack up and hit the road. It's a 3-hour trip back
Oh
to
boy.
San Diego, and so I won't be able to get this ready for distribution till sometime tonight or maybe tomorrow morning.
No, no problem. No problem. Well, listen, Ken and Joseph, again, I continue learning and growing, from my interaction with you. Thank you so much. Ed, as always, I appreciate it.
Thanks right
Yeah,
back to you
appreciate the
for a
opportunity.
terrific presentation. Thank you so much. I'm very
And
interested.
audience, this is
Absolutely.
unrehearsed, you may have guessed. But we want to do a high trust executive level conversation, not a webinar. Although there's nothing wrong with a webinar, as you can see, it's important sometimes to get some points across and to set a stage, a platform.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Okay. Thank you
Bye.
all.
Bye, everybody. Take
Thank
care
you.
now.
Oh,
Stay well.
well,
Stay cool.
yeah.